Welcome to AAT Learning Hub. I'm Bhumika Anand, a cardiac physician associate, and I welcome you all to your very first lecture in anatomy. Introduction to anatomical terminologies and planes. Human anatomy is defined as the study of structures in the human body. The word anatomy comes from two Greek words, ana meaning up and tomi to cut. So anatomy is to cut open, to cut up, or to dissect. There are two main approaches to learn anatomy. One is gross anatomy, which is also called the macro anatomy or topographical anatomy. This is the study of structures that can be seen by the naked eye. Number two is microscopic anatomy, which is also called histology. This is the study of structures at microscopic level, which is the cells and tissues that are not easily seen by the naked eye. A further division is the developmental anatomy, which is also called embryology. This is the study of development of an embryo from a single cell zygote to a fully formed fetus. So anatomy studies the form, how body structures look at different levels, whereas physiology studies the nature, how body structures work at different levels. We all use maps, right? Why? It helps us to locate a place, know the distance between two places, the direction of movement, the boundaries, right? Similarly, in medicine, there are certain universally accepted terminologies which medical professionals use to communicate effectively and to avoid misunderstanding. So there is a standard anatomical position which is used as a reference. And what is that position? Now consider this doll as your subject. Subject is standing straight and facing forward. Arms are hanging at the sides, slightly away from the trunk, with palms facing forward. Legs are placed together with feet facing forward. This is a standard anatomical position. Now let's move on to the directions. Let me draw a line that divides the body into two equal halves. So this line is called the midline. Anything to the left of the midline is the left side, and anything to the right of the midline is the right side. So whenever you mention left and right, it means the patient or the subject's left and the subject's right, not the observers. Okay. The next direction is anterior or ventral and posterior or dorsal. Always remember A comes before P. So anterior means the front of the body and posterior means back of the body. What do you have in the anterior part? Chest, abdomen, eyes, nose, and posteriorly you have the spine. So another example, anterior you have your toes, posterior is your ankle. The next direction is superior or cranial and inferior or caudal. Note the UP, up, in superior. So superior is anything above, towards the head. Also cranial means crown. So where do you place a crown? Head. Towards the head is superior and anything towards the feet is inferior. Let's look at this example. You have your eyes, nose and chin. Where are your eyes with respect to nose? Your eyes are superior to nose. Nose is inferior to your eyes. Nose is superior to chin and chin is inferior to nose. The next one is proximal and distal. Proximal, anything nearer to the trunk of the body or to the point of attachment to the body is proximal. Distal is anything away from the trunk or from the point of attachment to the body is distal. Example, shoulder is proximal, palm is distal, thigh is proximal, toes distal. The next one, medial and lateral. Medial is anything closer to the midline. Lateral is anything away from the midline. When you see this subject, the little finger is medial, thumb is lateral, eyes are medial, ears are laterally placed. Superficial. Anything closer to the surface of the body is superficial. Superficial, surface. Anything away from the surface of the body is deep. Next, unilateral, bilateral. Uni means single. Anything that involves one side of the body is unilateral. When it involves both the sides of the body, it's bilateral. Suppose a person develops weakness in the right arm. It is unilateral weakness. If it involves both the arms, it is bilateral weakness. Next term is ipsilateral and contralateral. Ipsilateral means same side of the body, whereas contralateral is opposite sides of the body. Suppose this person who developed weakness in the right arm had a fall because of which he had a cut in his right leg. It is called ipsilateral. Weakness in the right arm, a cut or a scar in the right leg. So that is ipsilateral. Another example is, if there is a tumor involving right side of the brain, it may affect vision ipsilaterally. That is, it will affect the right eye. Whereas when there is stroke involving the right side of the brain, it may cause contralateral paralysis. That is, stroke in the right side of the brain causing paralysis of the left leg. This is contralateral. Apart from these standard directions, you have something called prone, which means lying down posture with face down orientation, and supine. Supine is lying down posture with face up orientation. Again, note UP, up in supine. Okay. Next, let's move on to anatomical planes. These are hypothetical planes which are used to describe the location of structures in human anatomy. So there are three planes: sagittal, coronal or frontal, and transverse plane. So what is sagittal? Imagine a transparent sheet, a vertical sheet that passes through the body longitudinally, dividing the body into a left section and a right section. So this is sagittal plane. In frontal plane or the coronal plane, again imagine a transparent vertical sheet that passes through the body perpendicularly, dividing the body into a front, which is an anterior section, and a back, which is posterior section. The third one is the transverse plane. Here you have a horizontal plane parallel to the ground, dividing the body into an upper superior section and a lower inferior section. So this transverse plane is also known as transaxial plane. Let's move on to body cavities. A body cavity is a fluid-filled space inside the body that holds and protects internal organs. The dorsal or posterior cavity and the ventral or anterior cavity are the largest body compartments. Now, as you keep listening to me, just follow this diagram. In dorsal cavity, there is an upper cavity called the cranial cavity, which houses the brain, and a lower cavity called the spinal or vertebral cavity that encloses the spinal cord. Just as the brain and spinal cord make up a continuous structure, the cranial and the spinal cavities are also continuous. Anterior or the ventral cavity is further subdivided into the thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity. The thoracic cavity is enclosed within the rib cage and contains the lungs and the heart. The diaphragm forms the floor of the thoracic cavity and separates it from the abdominopelvic cavity. The abdominopelvic cavity is the largest cavity in the body. The abdominal cavity houses the digestive organs, while the pelvic cavity houses the organs of reproduction and excretion. Abdominal cavity is further divided into 4 quadrants or 9 regions for better understanding. Now let's draw a median plane and a transumbilical plane that intersects at the umbilicus, dividing the abdomen into 4 quadrants: right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, and left lower quadrant. This seems so easy to follow, right? But if you want to localize symptoms and arrive at an accurate diagnosis quickly, then a 9-section scheme would be helpful. This process may seem a little complicated, but if you understand, it will be helpful for your clinical practice. So what are the 9 regions? Now, let's draw one horizontal line inferior to ribs, one superior to pelvis, and 2 vertical lines from midpoint of each clavicle. So now what are the segments? Just remember these alphabets: H, L, I, HLI on the right and the left corner of the abdomen. So there is right and left hypochondriac region, right and left lumbar region, and right and left iliac region. Hypochondriac. Chondria means cartilage, bones. So because this portion is just below the cartilage, you call it hypochondriac. The next is the lumbar region. You call it lumbar because it is anterior to the lumbar vertebrae. It is called lumbar region. The last is the iliac region because this is just near the iliac fossa. Now let's move on to the center of the abdomen. So the center you have your umbilicus or navel. So this is umbilical region. Above the umbilical region is epigastric region and below is hypogastric region. So these are the 9 segments. Hope this video was helpful. Any feedback or queries, please leave it in the comment section. Stay connected with AAT Learning Hub. Thank you.